This is a movie we want to talk about for a very, very long time, and that movie is Steven Spielberg's AI. I was profoundly touched by it when I saw this movie, and I think I was about like 16 years old when I saw it, and I remember I was in the bathroom at the Regal Cinema in Lincolnshire, and you had your two typical like bros who come in, the guys with the backwards hats and the flip-flops, and they're just like, how could that stupid alien be praying to a statue for 2,000 years?
Please, please make me into a real live boy.
Thus, 2,000 years passed by.
Like, that movie was dumb, and I'm just thinking, you just don't understand it. And the thing that made AI so special to me is because it really is a movie where it's a mixture of Stanley Kubrick, because Stanley Kubrick developed this film for 20 years, and eventually walked up to Steven Spielberg, and he said, I think you should direct it because, it matches your sensibilities more.
Yeah.
Stanley began talking to me about it in the mid-1980s. And in the mid-1990s, he actually called me again. We had talked many, many times during those 10 years. And then one day he said, I think I have a great idea. I produce it, you direct it.
Which he does, Kubrick is the very pessimistic, the world's gonna end, everything sucks kind of guy.
And there are some purists who look at Kubrick like he was a real artist, and then Spielberg's the big commercial guy, and they don't realize that these guys actually very much respected each other. They really respect each other as artists, and Kubrick did realize that Spielberg's sensibilities were a better fit. But what I love what Spielberg did is he really made it a fusion of both of their voices,
Exactly, and it was the perfect fusion because it does have. It goes to extremes of its themes. You have the dehumanization of society. You have all these very grim, sort of heavy subjects, but then you have the sentimentality with the very controversial final 30 minutes of the picture. Which we will get into.
Well, and so you liked it right away. So after you saw it, because for me, I was disappointed initially because, the marketing was great. You look up the trailers for AI, and it's like, that's what trailers should be. They just give you a sense of what the film is, just enough to get interested. But they weren't really showing all their cards, which was good.
Yeah.
But I do have a tendency sometimes to read into things, and I know what I'm gonna get. I'm gonna get this really powerful. But I thought it was gonna be more fun, more just kind of like I was expecting something that's more a popcorn movie. And I was like, oh my God, I feel like I should be on some depression medication after this. It was so rough, and people just weren't expecting that. And they weren't expecting something as interpretive as the ending. And that's what it was. So, because I went in as a huge Haley Joel Osment fan. Because I had just seen The Sixth Sense. I was like, this kid's incredible. Even Pay It Forward, which has a lot of problems. I was like, he's brilliant in that. So I was like, yes, this is Osment and Spielberg together. I didn't even care about Jude Law at that point. I was like, I'm just more about these guys. But
amazing in that movie.
And Jude Law's incredible in it. But so I was just expecting that it wasn't going to be something that would be as challenging as it was, and that was one of the examples of a movie you get on a DVD and you watch the special features. All the special features on the AI DVD are what made me love the movie. When it starts really breaking down the essence of what was Spielberg, what was Kubrick, what was the techniques involved. It's an astounding picture on many levels.
Yeah, the thing that really I think a lot of folks didn't catch even the advertising is it was Kubrick's name mixed with Spielberg, and Stanley Kubrick's movies were films that were never really embraced or loved, and maybe with the exception of The Shining, until maybe 20 years later or something like that. And I think AI is kind of that movie where you spread the word of mouth, it'll go down that path where it's Stanley Kubrick adamantly hated people who would just not people, but he would hate the idea of someone seeing a movie once and then, that's it. Then you've seen the film. He's like, no, you never see a movie if you've just seen it once.
Yeah.
And AI
And that's the challenge as a
truly-
critic, too, is when you have to see something like, okay, write my review right
Yeah,
now. You have to know it's the
exactly.
initial impressions.
Yeah.
We'll get to Ebert in a minute. But his review of this was an initial impression he had to go back to and revise.
Yeah.
I think that's the problem, because David, after all, no matter how cute he is, no matter that he is played by Haley Joel Osment, is nevertheless a robot and not a real little boy. The humans in this movie are his family. These people who bring him home, who invest in him, who love him, and then abandon him. What is their story? What is their motivation? I think that's maybe where Spielberg should have focused.
It's a movie that is a treasure upon each viewing, where you get something each time. This is Steven Spielberg's sentimentalism, but it's matured. It's an emotionally mature, complicated picture.
And there are no easy answers. That's the thing. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people see the ending as some sort of easy payoff, but it's not.
No.
It's actually an incredibly bleak ending.
They're not.
in many ways.
They're not aliens, folks. They're robots. They had to tell the press that.
Well, I mean, there's some sort of connection with them and the Close Encounters aliens. That is a similar design in terms of the long, gangly
They were the
limbs
temporary
and all that.
design with the special effects department until they could get the final look for the aliens. And essentially, what they ended up doing is they just kind of stuck with that design, which was kind of lazy on Spielberg's part. I'll admit. But
I like it. I like that
Yeah.
it is kind of a callback to Close Encounters, and to him,
Yeah.
they are aliens. He
Yeah.
doesn't know that they're also robots.
the global warming in the movie
Oh
is
my God.
shockingly relevant to today. When you
Yeah.
have Ben Kingsley, who is the super robot, who's narrating in the beginning, and he says, various
first
cities
line.
have,
The first line is
Yeah.
those days after the icebergs melted.
and
And we
cities
lost
have
New York
flooded
and all these,
yeah.
the ocean levels rose. I mean, this is just, a few years from now, basically.
Yeah, this
is
was
what
in
it's
2001 that they said this.
Those were the years after the ice caps had melted because of the greenhouse gases. And the oceans had risen to drown so many cities along all the shorelines of the world. Millions of people were displaced. Climate became chaotic.
And that was also, this is the first movie that I thought of when Robin Williams died. It's always going to be one of the hardest deaths for me to accept.
Starving minds, welcome to Dark Tonal, where fast food for thought is served up 24 hours a day in 40,000 locations nationwide.
Well, I began my tribute to him. Like that was one of the few times where someone died and I had to immediately write something. I had to write a tribute on my blog, and I started with the monologue he reads in AI, where he's the kooky doctor guy that they go, Dr. No. They go to Dr. No, this big automated, like Ask Jeeves basically, saying, where are we supposed to go? And it's Williams doing his whole shtick, which by then had become kind of mechanical. Like he was still great at that, but it's like he could put on his shtick. And then when it all just kind of evaporates and the mask goes, then all we're left with is just Williams talking about the world's more full of weeping than you can understand. I mean, oh my God. That was the first thing I thought of, where I was just like, there is Williams kind of exposing all the demons he went through. I mean, there's endless layers of
That's a phenomenal
profundity to this movie.
aspect to it, because it's like Robin Williams always presents himself as funny, but immediately it's like, cut the bull. Like, give me the real answer. It's almost them saying, who are you?
Yeah.
And then he says, I'm sad.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
and,
I thought it was incredible.
Come away, O human child, to the waters and the wild, with a fairy hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than you can understand.
This is one of John Williams' best scores, honestly. And
definitely.
actually, when they play the piano concerto towards the end of the picture, when Monica is brought back to life,
And that's the
David's
mother.
mom.
That's the mother.
Yes.
Frances O'Connor, I believe her name
Yes,
was.
mommy's brought back to life. What they did essentially was they actually let that concerto play out, and they edited it to the music.
Which is what they did with the final 15 minutes of E.T., which is my favorite finale of any movie, where Spielberg heard that music and he's like, that's how we cut it. That's how we cut it. From the shot of the kids on the bikes, zooming down the road, to that cut to black on Elliot's face. That's all right connected to the note of the music. And that's so I didn't know that they did that with the AI too. There are some weird parallels.
Yeah, there certainly is. And I think that's why in the end Kubrick
They both want to go home.
E.T. phone home. We're home!
When he's in that room with all those replicas of himself and he realizes how irrelevant it is, it's kind of us when we, go down the street of Chicago. It's like, here's all this life. Who am I to anybody?
That is one of the greatest bits of John Williams scoring too. Like that really atonal, like the atonal howls and just it's so haunting. That when I would listen to the AI soundtrack and I would just be like lying in bed, like this would be when I was in like high school theater and I had like a play to do at night. It was like I just want to like decompress for a minute. That would just give me like the freakiest like fever dreams of like really just feeling like you're just stranded in this planet without people and you're just wandering around. Like it's a trip.
After they cut away from the first scene where William Hurt's pitching the idea of David, there's a piece of music in here. They fade down from that scene. They fade up to Monica speaking to Martin, sort of when he's in a comatose state. And the music in it is very relevant from when they find the monolith and it's playing that horrible ringing sound, and you cut to the Jupiter mission, and then you have, I think it was Johann Strauss playing the Gayani Ballet Suite. I'm sure it's not pronounced
That was
Gayani,
from 2001, or they used that
well,
same
they did
track
it, but the strings that Williams used is very much like
very
this kind
evocative
of tonal shift.
Yeah.
And that movie uses a lot of tonal shifts like that, where it slowly fades down and it goes in the next act.
Yeah. That's a great point. And
I
think
when Martin comes in, they slow down, they fade down, they come in the next act. When but anyways, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, because I think Williams said that this score was very similar to Close Encounters, and what I love about Close Encounters is he utilizes the melody of When You Wish Upon a Star from Pinocchio.
So it's a very eclectic score and a very voluminous score, very different from the things that Steven and I have done before, with the possible exception maybe of Close Encounters. I think it's closer to that in its timbral aspect.
So there's kind of a Pinocchio connection between both of these.
The movie is very unapologetically telling you this is Pinocchio.
Oh yeah, yes. For sure. But I just love even just the subtlety he puts in.
Outside
things.
of when they're reading Pinocchio on a book in a pond,
that
was a little like, why are you on a canoe all of a sudden?
It's definitely a bit much.
Yeah.
but there's subtlety and nuance in the Williams music. That's
I remember I used to have like a music teacher in film school who hated John Williams and said like music should be invisible in the picture. And I'm like, it depends on the picture.
Yeah, there's many different approaches that work great. You know, I love that you just cannot separate the image from the Williams music. No. It's unthinkable without it. There.
Oh God, yeah, it would be terrible.
Yeah.
Well, someone did do an experiment like that on YouTube where they showed the ending of E.T. without the music. It's so
probably is awkward.
Flat.
Yeah. So going back to bringing back Monica, right?
Yeah,
so
they
bring her
Monica
back like the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. It's the DNA.
Oh my God.
That's also kind of an interesting.
Bingo. Dino DNA.
And there was a fascinating note in Roger's re-review of the film, because he originally gave it 3 stars, and his complaint was he wanted to know more about the human characters and why, what they were feeling. And then, he goes back and he's like, well, what really matters is the robot's perception of human emotion.
Yeah.
And how it affects them, from my understanding. And
the initial review, he said this film has mastered the artificial but not the intelligence.
He
felt like it was definitely lacking in, like, well, why should we care about this robot? Why should we think about this?
And then he looks back and he's like, oh, it's because it's us learning our own emotions. And especially when you get to the ending, it's he was speaking to another critic, and she had a wonderful note that I didn't even think about. I'm like, oh my God, why did I think of this? When they have the blue fairy come to life.
You have been searching for me, haven't you, David?
my whole life.
A fellow critic told Roger that that didn't happen. His mom did not come back to life. The Blue Fairy wasn't alive. Those super advanced robots put that in his head.
That's right.
And he thought that was happening. And then in the end, that's what he really wanted. And they did that by going through his memory and by trying to understand what human emotion is. Because David was designed out of the emotion of William Hurt's, Professor Hobby's
Professor Hobby, yes.
Yeah, deceased son.
His hobby is to bring back his son. I love that. Yeah. And that's all indicated in the Kingsley line where he says, give him what he wants.
Yeah.
Right there. It's like, okay, we're going to put on a show. We're going to extract the information through this way, you know.
Now you can bring her back. Can't you?
Give him what he wants.
And that's the beauty of that ending. You don't. It doesn't just tell you, oh, this is what happened. You don't know what happened. And to your point earlier, when it doesn't give you easy answers, when Monica drops David off in the middle of the woods.
No. No, Mommy, please. No. Please, no.
They would destroy you, David. They would
It's the same situation where, let's say, you have a little kid, and you have a pit bull or something, and one day the pit bull gets mad and he bites the kid.
Let me go! Mom! Mom! Mom!
And you put him in the woods. Like, what would you do? You love him. He's always been a part of your family, but in the end, who's going to be more important?
That's right. Your flesh and blood.
It's going to be your flesh and blood kid.
Yeah.
So although what she does is monstrous.
I'm sorry, I'm not real. If you let me, I'll be so real for you. No, David. Let go!
Because at the end we question, was it humane what she did? Take her to the factory where he was built and have him kill him.
Yeah.
Or leave him off in the woods. The reason this movie always meant so much to me, maybe because I saw it with my mother, it reminded me of my mother. And it reminded me of my family, of what I'm grateful for. And it reminded me of my childhood. And I think maybe Spielberg was channeling some of his own childhood, because I know he grew up in Ohio and he had to, go through, I think, a divorce at the time. And that's
that's why the recurring thing of like the distant father figures or the absent father figures.
Yeah, because he doesn't love Martin in the end. He loves Monica.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
In the end, it's all about just wanting to have a family. And that theme really resonates, I think, on the most personal level for Spielberg in this one. Because in the end, you realize sometimes someone doesn't love you unconditionally the way you want them to, but you can't let go of it.
David, the most wonderful thing in the whole world has happened. This is Martin. This is my son.
That's right.
And it's about being able to let go. And in the end, that's why David dies. Like, he dies in peace with a fantasy. And just like how sometimes we die, maybe with a lie that we keep within ourselves. See, it's an intellectual, complicated ending.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, and him praying to the Blue Fairy for 2,000 years or however. I mean, it's no different than us praying to a deity or some higher power, just something that's what keeps us going, even if it pins us under the carousel for thousands of years.
Yes.
That's definitely the metaphor, and it also connects to what is the defining theme of Kubrick, which is to what degree are humans programmed? Are we machines like the tools that we create?
Yeah.
Like I love that it's always about like how much of our humanity is programmed, how much of it is genuine, and that's what he's getting at in 2001. Like David is no different from the bone that the apes turn into, like a bludgeon.
Is he any more heartless than Hal?
Yeah.
Because they were gonna kill Hal. Like, hey.
Exactly.
So Hal's like, no, I'll kill all of you.
Yes. And the humans become so reliant on the technology that the technology becomes more human than them. That's the great thing in 2001, where Hal is so much more compelling of a character than the two schmucks that are on the on the.
This dies right now.
And that's they're kind of doing that in AI, where there is kind of a mechanical like hollow element to the humans, and I think Spielberg just nailed it. Like I think that is very much how the Kubrick people would have acted in this environment. There's something kind of weirdly inhuman about the humans in AI.
Thank you, Mommy. Thank you so much.
And Osment's performance, I'll just go ahead and say it. I think he's one of the greatest actors in cinema. I believe it.
Of all time?
If you're looking at what he did from Sixth Sense to AI, I've never seen a child actor do anything like what he did, where he starts out in the very kind of, I'm doing the cute Haley Joel Osment thing, but something's off about this.
I like your floor.
The arc that he has to go, the emotional arc where he is just ravaged by the end, and then he's facing himself of how he was at the beginning, and you're like, oh my God, I cannot believe the emotional ground that's been covered between these two ends. I mean, that performance
because he goes from the sweet little kid to being not sure of how to feel about everything to being violently angry, you know, smashing the other David in the face and decapitating him.
I'm David! I'm David! I'm David! I'm David! I'm David!
Why did Professor Hobby leave that door open for him to discover all the other robots for him to kill himself?
Yeah,
I don't get that.
Hobby is kind of a klutz. Let's just say.
Yeah, he is. I mean,
he has a one-track mind. He's going to use all the technology just to bring back the sun, and that's all he thinks about. He doesn't really think too deeply about things.
He's us when we're stuck in grief and we can't move beyond it.
And he's thinking about what this robot represents to him. He's not thinking about the destroyed life of the robot that he's brought to life.
I thought I was one of a kind.
My son was one of a kind.
And that doesn't think enough to say, I probably should keep that door locked, or I probably should keep an eye on. I'll just leave you in this library. I'll get everyone else out here.
Like we're going to bring out the team. Like it took him like 30 minutes to get the team. Like, what
That's
the hell?
right, exactly.
Just be like, guys, he's here. Like, I think they left him there. I think it was just him and he went crazy, you know? And they just had these leftover models.
I love that interpretation, that he's the only one left in that building.
I always thought that happened. I always thought this, like, everyone's just like even when he was
like, who wants to work where the lions weep? You know, they're probably finding some affordable housing.
Exactly. Like, why do we want to
Cloud
live...
City building or something? I don't know.
Exactly. Like, why do we want to live somewhere where, you know, it's already flooded?
Yeah.
Like, what are we hiding from? I guess because people hate them because they make artificiality.
Yeah.
You get Brendan Gleeson, who kind of had a good point when he was burning all the robots.
Of course, we all know why they made them. To steal your hearts, to replace your children. See how they try to imitate our emotions now?
But he's kind of right. It's like, look, they designed this child to manipulate our emotions, and David is manipulating his parents in the beginning. You know, he keeps trying to find things to make them like him, whether play hide or go seek.
I found you.
Ow! Now get out of here!
Or whether it's to just kind of randomly, sporadically start laughing in the middle of the dinner.
Yeah,
you know, it's like he's finding something in his circuitry for them to finally love him, and then he finally does find that thing. Except his mom loves him, and then it's like you never know if he gets that love back.
What were those words for, Mommy?
What did you call?
Well, and I think that was it. I think people, if they didn't quite get it, they weren't getting the emotional release or the catharsis that they would normally get from Spielberg. I think that was why people were resistant to it.
Spaceships shooting rainbows at the end or flowers growing. I'm not knocking on E.T., but it's like it's not a.
It's a totally different.
It's not a happy film. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah, but it's. I think it's one of those movies that the more times you see it, the more you get out of it, and it's just profoundly affected me whenever I would feel lost or whenever I would want to go back home. I just think about that movie.
Yeah,
you know?
And I think about it more and more, really, with climate change and the environmental catastrophes that we're facing right now in this society. This is
the season finale of The World.
Yeah, it's starting
to.
It's feeling like that in many ways, and I'm grateful that Spielberg had that clout now. Maybe he would be like, maybe a studio wouldn't even take they had gambled on. Maybe this would have just gone right to Netflix at this point. Yeah. But I'm so grateful that it did. And then he went right back and did his kind of Kubrick-styled a bit, but it was more of like an action movie. It was kind of like his Kubrick-y action movie. Minority Report, and that was a huge hit.
Yeah, that
the
was
following summer, and it was greatly
it was
entertaining.
2003 that came out. Yeah.
Very entertaining, but also much more kind of conventionally satisfying
narrative. It was more streamlined,
narrative.
it was more like the bad guy gets what he gets in the end.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then the good guys, they get to have a nice, peaceful life, and it was more accessible. AI is a movie where you see it at first, or a lot of people did. I liked it right away because I'm a genius. But other people they see it at first, they'd be like, "What the hell was that?"
Yeah.
And I just watched a movie where a little kid died, and then they magically brought things back to life, and aliens came in for no reason.
I have a lot of friends who still can't stand it and say, I disagree with you on the ending, and they have every right to. I mean, it's an interpretive thing. I just think there's so much more depth. It is one of those films that's like the gift that keeps on giving. Actually, I think it's great that we're doing this on, September 10th?
Yes.
Is,
my God, it is.
Because I think this is one of the films, this is the first film I think about when I think of 9/11, even though it came out, a couple months before, because we're looking at this post-apocalyptic skyline of New York that's just, filled with water, and we see the Twin Towers.
Yeah,
it's like one of the last times you could really
fought to keep those in there.
Yeah, and it was one of the last times you could really see that on film.
Yeah.
And there's a shot in the movie where Jude Law, who is like the sex robot, who goes against his programming to help this boy, and brilliant performance. I mean, him and Osment, I think, it's two of the best performances in any Spielberg movie. And there's a scene where he sees David throwing himself off a building. Yes, and he comes down like a tear, and I think that's an homage to the film In Cold Blood, where you see this killer and he's looking out the window and you see rain, the reflection of rain going down his face, because he can't openly have emotion himself, so he needs the rain to do it. And so here's a robot who can't cry, and he needs the reflection to do it. So you see like how David's unlocking this emotion in the Jude Law character. But also, I mean, to me, that to me is like the seminal image of 9/11. Again, this came out 2 months before, but just the idea of the people falling, that's like the image that still haunts me from all the coverage of that.
Their bodies are our tears weeping for them after they have passed.
Yes, yes. This is the best film to watch on September 11th of this year. This is probably coming out after, but this is the film I'd watch.
Yeah,
this is a film I'd watch to just kind of bring me back to what it was like, in those months. Yeah,
it was more the pessimistic picture during a post 9/11.
And people didn't want a pessimistic picture.
Yeah,
they wanted Spider-Man next year.
Yeah. Guys, we can't use this anymore. I'm sorry. We have to use something else. We have to make a different trailer, okay? I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry.
And they wanted Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, and the first Harry Potter film that winter.
Yeah.
And you, I mean, I think you can draw a direct line from the escapism that was triggered from 9/11, the hits, to the MCU and everything that followed.
Yeah.
Like, I remember just the hunger for that first Spider-Man film was just enormous. And that has left us where we are now today.
Did you
see the studios battling over Spider-Man?
I think AI is a perfect homage to where we are now.
Absolutely.
And how the world kind of changed, post 9/11. And Spielberg, actually, that's not the first time he really wanted the Twin Towers in the background. If you look at the end of Munich, and the ending shot when they walk away, they got the Twin Towers
That's
there
right.
as well. Yeah.
Which reminds me of his pal Scorsese's movie Gangs in New York, where you have that flash forward in time and you see the Twin Towers. Again, and about this idea of what makes a real American, who's a real American, the people who live in denial of the fact that we're ultimately a nation of immigrants anyway. I was like, that's kind of topical to have that back there. Yeah, exactly.
This is something I want to talk about so long.
Oh,
because, I will say this. When you watch this video, at the end, as a little treat, you will see real footage of me crying to the ending, just sobbing uncontrollably.
Wait, you filmed this?
I filmed it.
Recently?
Like a couple of years ago.
A couple of years ago. Oh,
it was on my phone and I kept it.
That's great. That's great.
I just watched it like,
Yeah.
So,
I could do that for myself, and It's a Wonderful Life every Christmas.
oh God,
I could do that. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming
Absolutely,
on. Absolutely,
my pleasure. Absolutely. Yeah.
And here's footage of me crying like a baby to the end.
Let's watch.